Okay, well, hello everybody. So today is a different kind of review. I recently did a review on the universe. If you look through my YouTube channel, you'll just see it's called the Universe Review. Um, to sort of keep that theme going, today I wanted to review the future. Now you're probably wondering, how can you review the future? Because it's like hasn't even happened yet. What are you, like some sort of what are those people called? Fortune tellers or time travelers? Um, Now this review on the future is basically just my ideas on where I think the future is going. Um, Remember, anything I say in this video is not 100% true. Most likely it's probably a pretty high percentage, um, depending on the math you're using. So here we are. It's 2018. We made it to 2018, which is not bad. Um, when you really look where we are in 2018, it's sort of funny because where people predicted we were going to be in 2018, flying cars. And if you look at all the futuristic movies from like the 70s, 80s, 90s, or whatever, I mean, yeah, it's pretty funny looking back now because we definitely don't have flying cars, that's for sure. Uh, but so if we get off the topic of flying cars, because I can really sort of make that into a completely separate video. Um, which is ironic because I did a video reviewing a 2018 calendar, and you would think most of those would have been flying cars, but in fact, none of them could fly. There was one that had this sort of like weird wing thing in the back that looked like it could have flown, but I don't think it was ever tested. So like, I can't confirm for sure if it could fly, but it kind of looked like it. Um, so, um, the future is it's going to be a different place, and in an ironic way, technology is really helping us evolve into better people. Like you have no choice but to evolve into a better person. It kind of reminds me, the future sort of reminds me a lot of like going back to very simple sort of community based living. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, back in the day, people lived in small communities, small tribes, whether it's a group of 100 people or 200 or 50 people or whatever the case is. Now, when you live in a small community like that, you really don't have much of a choice but to be nice to each other. Because if you're not nice to each other, you don't help out, you kind of just get thrown out of that community. And back in the day, if you got thrown out of a community like that, that's a serious thing. Because we needed one another, to help out. So then after all of that, going back to cars, ironically, and transportation, we started developing ways to move, trains and then cars, and that allowed us to sort of like go farther and farther away and split up from these small little communities. And then you have modern day living, which is what we've experienced for quite a while now. Whether you want to call modern day living the last 20 years, 30 years, 100 years, whatever you want to call it. Definitely probably since the invention of trains, but then definitely with cars, and then like past that. So then we just split off into different areas. Cities get ridiculously big. And then when you get to that point, accountability to be a decent, nice person kind of gets lost more because everyone just sort of becomes faceless, right? You just see people just going by you, driving by you, walking by you. And what is their incentive to really truly be nice to one another? Because, there's some people who basically wake up, They go into their garage, get inside their car, drive to work, go into the underground parking. They finish their day work, they get back into their car, and they drive back home, and they don't really have to deal with anybody. So that person, let's say on a weekend they decided to go outside. They decided to go out on a weekend on their day off, and they went to like the market or something to get some food or something, or wherever they go, and they meet some random person. If they're rude to that person, or if they're like not very nice to that person, they're probably never even going to see that person again. So it's like, to them, it's, it's whatever. They get back in their car, drive back home. So basically what I'm trying to say is that, what is the real incentive for people in modern society to really be nice to each other? Because everyone's sort of faceless. You do whatever you want. You see somebody on the street, you say whatever you want, you pass by, and then that's it. So where am I going with this? Well, with the way I see the future going is that it's going to force us to feel more like we're back in that small little community and tribe where we have to be nice to each other, or we get outed from society or our community. Now, you see all these shows recently now, like Black Mirror, who have this rating system, whether it's on top, you see just like this rating system on top of your head or through some app, and you walk by somebody on the street and you're like, oh, they have a 23% rating. And then you're kind of like, oh, like I guess I should stay away from that person. Now, this idea that Black Mirror had, it's not necessarily a very mind-blowing idea. I've thought of the idea, and I'm sure I can't be the only one who thought of that idea because I'm not some sort of genius. I always used to joke around about the idea. I'll tell you where I came from this. Long before Black Mirror, I know people don't use it as much anymore, but back in the day, I used to use eBay a lot. I know a lot of people use Amazon now, and that's cool, whatever. This is not an eBay versus Amazon thing, but what I'm trying to say is, I remember I used to use eBay quite a lot. And the way you know how to buy from somebody is if they have a good rating. If somebody has like a 99.9% rating, it's like, oh, that person's good, I'm going to buy from them. And clearly, if you see somebody who has like a very low rating, you're like, I'll probably avoid this person. And I always used to joke around about the idea of like, wow, like I could just almost see it in the future where when you walk by somebody, they just have like a rating above their head, and you just know if they're a decent person or not based on their ratings. Now, of course, there could be flaws in that, and there's ways that system could be messed up, obviously. But just as a general thought, the more we get connected with technology, the more it's harder to be a crappy person. Look what's going on everywhere in society right now. People are being outed, whether it's people in Hollywood or people anywhere. Basically, what I'm trying to say is the more we're connected with technology, you really have two options. It forces you to either become a better person, or you're just going to get outed from society. It's really as simple as that. Because the more we get connected, if people start seeing, the more we get connected, it's harder to hide things. It just is. So the more we get connected with technology, and the more we become one, it's harder to just hide being a crappy person. Back in the day, you can just be sort of like some really crappy person and hide in your mansion, in your house, and just like, whether it's like these weird billionaires that can just do whatever they want, or basically, or they don't have to be weird billionaires. It could just be the regular person. But the idea is, or like politicians who like hide inside their house. You never get to see them, right? They just make all these rules and stuff, and then they just hide in their house, and they have no accountability because they kind of hid from the public. It's getting harder and harder to do that now. It's really hard to be doing things like that and just hide anymore, because you just, people have so much access to information, and we're all linked. So in a really weird, ironic way, technology and the internet and everything is forcing us to become better people. Look at, for example, even now with, people talk about, internet trolls and people who like, people who go online and you just start saying a lot of negative stuff and hateful stuff. The internet and our connection with each other is still in that wild, wild west stage where like, everyone has a voice now, and everyone says whatever they want on the internet. And in a weird way, you're still sort of hiding behind those messages a lot at times because you're still somewhat anonymous. So you kind of just feel like saying whatever you want. But I have a feeling even with that, eventually, those types of people will be weeded out more and more because no one wants that. No one wants negative, hateful people around. And now, since we have the technology and the connection that we're all in this whole crazy game together, it's harder to hide when you're doing crappy stuff. Whether you're doing crappy stuff in politics, in your own personal life, whether it's in Hollywood, wherever the case is, it's really hard. It's getting harder and harder to just be a crappy person who just does really crappy things, whether you're typing really negative messages online or whether you're just doing whatever you're doing. So eventually, the more we become connected, it's like you either have to evolve into becoming a nicer person, a more loving, nicer person, or you're just going to get outed because no one wants to deal with you. Whether it's going to be exactly like, that we have like a literal rating system up top of our heads, and when you walk by somebody, you can actually just see, 98% approval rating, whatever the case. Whether we're going to have something exactly like that or something similar to that, the idea is you will know people better. And so if you just act like a really crappy person, people are going to be very aware of that. So either you're just going to get outed from normal society, or you can just have to force yourself to become a better person. It's really just as simple as that. Now, I know a lot of people think, that can go into a lot of like crazy spaces and negative things. Of course, that can really go anywhere. And a lot of people also have concern about like, well, if we get too connected, then, it's a privacy thing. I don't think people should be able to know that much about me or, read my thoughts and do this. Well, that it's not. Things don't stay the same forever. That's the one thing that we as people sometimes have a hard time grasping. Things don't stay the same forever. A lot of times when people talk about the future, they're like, I can't believe this is going to be this way, and I don't want this to change, and this is going to be different. Well, things constantly change. There's no way around that. Everything constantly evolves and changes. And, whether you're talking about things in a scientific way, or maybe, let's say, somebody's, instead of being more scientific, they're more into like a spiritual or metaphysical type of idea. Because in that community, the idea is the more we evolve and the more the higher we raise our awareness and our consciousness, we by default become more linked anyways. So there's two ways to become one and link. In a sort of metaphysical, spiritual way, where somehow our consciousness and our thoughts and our feelings all merge together, or through science or through technology. Like the internet is basically like a technological version of like that spiritual, metaphysical connectedness. And when you get to that stage, yes, we will feel each other's thoughts and our feelings, because that's the only way it can be. That's the whole idea of like being connected. There's like separation and then there's connection. And once you become more connected, whether it's with technology or just in an organic, metaphysical, spiritual way, either way, you're becoming more connected. And yes, that means it's a different sort of experience, a more connected experience where we feel each other's thoughts more, our ideas, our fears, the things we like, everything that someone else goes through, you feel it more and more. And, it's not about the idea of like being scared about it, or like it is what it is. It just keeps progressing. That's just the way evolution goes. And so so the way I see the future is, by default, the most positive thing I can think of as far as the internet and technology in the future is that I really do believe people will be nicer to each other, whether they want to or not, just because we're all going to be connected. And this whole age of just hiding in your house and doing whatever you want to do, and nobody can find out what you're doing, and that age is gone. And this new age that we're going into, it's irrelevant whether you think that it's good or bad or whatever. You can judge it however you want, but it's happening. Whether you want to or not, it's happening, because that's just the way evolution works. We're going into that next stage. And I, for one, am very, very curious to see how it all plays out, because, of course, there's always different circumstances and possibilities to how this is going to play out. But that's, for me, the one thing that I focus on the most is the idea that we will become more connected, and we will end up by default having to evolve in a way that we're nicer to each other and more honest to each other, because if you're not, you're really not going to be part of society anymore, because no one wants to deal with you. It's still, it's still a little bit easy now to just sort of be kind of a crappy person and still hide out a bit. But soon, I think the more we evolve into this society, is like it's going to be harder and harder. So the way I see it is that it's a fun thing to just experience, seeing how this new stage of our existence here on Earth is going to be. There's really not much else I can say about that. To me, as far as the future, that's what I wanted to talk about and focus on. Just the idea that us becoming more and more connected will, by default, force us to evolve into better people, because you just can't be a crappy person anymore. People will see. It's just as simple as that. And living in a world where people are nicer to each other, more caring, I mean, how is that a bad thing? I'll take that. I'm very willing to step into that next phase of our evolution here on Earth and see how it goes. Of course, there's pluses and minuses with all of this. And it's not like, people always look back like, well, it was better during the 50s, or it was better during this period. None of them are better or worse. They're just simply a different experience. That's the one thing. If you can just accept for the fact that there's no time frame on Earth that was better or worse, it's just different experiences. All of them had negative and positive aspects of it. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, I miss the simpler times when we didn't have cell phones and you could just." Yes, I get it. That was a different time and a different experience. And now we're living in a different time and different experience, and they're all different. They're all unique in their own ways. But this idea of judging one as better or worse, it's completely subjective, and they're just a completely different experience. So if we can go into this next stage of our evolution here on Earth with an open mind, and just we'll just see how it goes, I consider that the best approach, and we'll just have to see. Maybe I'll look back at this YouTube video 20 years from now, and I'll see what I think. So we'll see how things go, and that's why a lot of times at the end of my videos I like to say, everyone have a good day, be nice to each other, take care, because to me that's the most important thing. We all have different opinions in life, we all like different things, we all dislike certain things. At the end of the day, if we're just nice to each other, respectful toward each other, doesn't matter if you're living in the 1950s or if you're living in the future, if we're all just nice to each other, help each other out, and we're respectful, then we'll have a good time no matter what era we're living in. And that's all I want to say. So you all have a great day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.